On a number of forums that I frequented and frequent, I've actually often heard pupils say, how do you write a critical essay? Or what's the best way to approach a critical essay? What are the best quotations I should use? And so forth. And so I ended up thinking about this whole issue and began to think, well, maybe it'd be an idea to write a booklet like this about how to approach critical essay and what I feel are the main criteria to write a successful critical essay. And I wrote a rough draft of this, and then later I added a great deal more to it. And this video is about really what's in this. It's not going to go through all the details of that. That's in the booklet if you wish to purchase it. And I have written a lot of great and considerable details, particularly about the SQA criteria. However, the first thing when I'm looking at an essay and how to create a successful critical essay, the first thing is quite simply, can you understand the question set and how to decode it? And I get the impression from what I read and hear from pupils talking about this, that not everybody, a lot do, but not everybody knows how to decode a higher question. And so I thought that'd be maybe the best way to begin looking at this. And so looking at one of the 2018 novel prose questions, it was quite simply this. Choose a novel or short story in which important human values are explored. It's quite general, and in most prose texts that you're studying, there will be the issue of human values. So it's a generic question that is virtually applicable to any question, any prose text that you're actually reading. However, decoding it, what is it actually asking you? Well, the first thing is, what is the text that you are studying, and do you believe it actually has human values? Well, the obvious answer to that is yes. And so you will say the text I am studying is blah, 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 by whoever it is, and it deals with the human values of whatever. And it's really quite a short introductory paragraph, and it's detailed in the booklet and shows you how you can do that. However, the main meat of the question then is, with reference to appropriate techniques, explain how these values are explored. Well, the human values, important human values, shouldn't be one, probably shouldn't be two. You should be looking at around about 3 human values that are explored in the text. It may be that because of time you have to go down to 2, but you certainly would never think of going down to 1. But between 2 and 3. So with regards to a particular human value, you are required to explain, to show how the techniques, the writer's techniques, and here we're talking about simile, paragraphing, now simile, theme, alliteration, syntax, all these sorts of values that we'll have studied within the text. You're to explain how these values are explored. How does the writer explore this human value through the use of these literary techniques? And you really need to join together those 2 points: the exploration of the human values, along with how that is carried out through writers' techniques. These 2 have got to marry together because they are part and parcel of the part 1 of that question. You cannot separate the human values from the appropriate writer's techniques. They are required, they are absolutely required in any way that you answer that question. I suggest that you have maybe 3, so you'll have 3 main sections to your essay. Take human value 1, human value 2, human value 3 if you have time to go that far. The second part of the question is, how does this add to your appreciation of the text as a whole? How does the writer's use of these appropriate techniques to explore these human values, how does that add to your appreciation of the text as a whole. That's what we call evaluation. And that can be informal. The SQA have put it on our own record saying, because this is an examination, they will possibly they will agree and accept that the evaluation can be informal, or as they use the word, implied. They read through your essay, they see, well, actually here's a bit of evaluation. My advice, it is formal. You write it in specifically into the sections. You formally talk about the evaluation of each of the values that are explored. So there will be 3 evaluations, each about the particular value that's been explored and the use of particular techniques to explore that value. I'm not a great believer in the implied evaluation. Put it in, make it clear to the examiner that you are actually putting in evaluation as well. How you do that, it depends on what device you use, whether you actually use SQAE, which is what I've got and described in the essay, or whether you use another one by your teacher. It really doesn't matter. They're all formal means of structuring a critical essay, and which one you choose is entirely up to you. But each and every one of them will deal with the 4 areas. The S if I'm using SQAE, the S, the statement. You've made your essay, introduction to your essay, the novel I have chosen, or the short story I've chosen is blah, 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 by whom, and the human values that this essay explores are, and then within that first paragraph, put them down. They are this one, that one, and the next one. So that your essay has 3 structures. This one, that one, and the next one are all explored as main sections in your essay. And taking one section, the first section, you will have your S, your SQAE, your S, your statement. What is that value that is explored by literary techniques in this essay? Then you will have your quotation. And that quotation must match the statement. I always say to my pupils, your statement is the point you want to make. The statement is the point you want to make about, in this case, the human values that are explored by literary techniques. Your quotation is your proof. Your quotation marries the statement. Here's what you want to say, and your quotation is proof of the point you are going to make. Your analysis, which is the third part, is where you demonstrate and you prove to the examiner that this quotation actually does prove the statement I have made at the beginning of that section. So your statement is the point you want to make. Your quotation is your proof. It proves the point you are trying to make. And your analysis is where you show quite clearly to the examiner how that quotation proves that statement. And then your evaluation goes on there. Now that's all discussed in the booklet, in how to structure an essay. In the booklet I go through SQAE. It doesn't matter which device or formal structure you use. It will actually it'll follow the same route. It'll still be statement, quotation, analysis, and evaluation, and the link in between them should be the same. Here's the point. That's your statement. Here's my proof. That's your quote. Here's how my proof qualifies my statement, improves my statement, and then finally, here's my evaluation. Here's how I was affected by and dealt and how I felt about this particular element of the essay. And that, as I say, is explained in quite a bit of detail. The next thing I want to look at, and I'm going to go through it in a fairly rapid way because I don't want to go through all the details. This is pages of this is described in the booklet, but it's worth looking at in detail. This is the National 5 listing. These words are SQA words. I have not added a single word of my own there. I've copied the SQA's words for these boundaries. The numbering 1 to 5, that's mine. The grading is SQA. But what is this saying? Well, you've got your SQAE structure, and you can write out all your points and your 4 points and your 4 quotes and your 4 analysis and your 4 evaluations. But what distinguishes a top essay, an outstanding essay, from, let's say, a succeeds essay? And it's in that language. And you really need to study this in great detail, because this is how you can assure that not only have you got a structure, not only have you got a good logical argument and you're answering the question properly and formally, and it's a good essay, but it needs to have sort of aspects within it, and that is the language you use, the critical language and the devices. And it also gives you indications of things that the SQA are expecting. Let's take our succeeds and candidate demonstrates. That candidate has some familiarity with the text as a whole. I've highlighted in red the words I want to stand out. This candidate doesn't know the text fully. They've got some idea about the text, but they don't really know the text. But they know enough to answer a question on it. Go to your 1, a high degree of familiarity with the text as a whole. This person has read the text fully, probably more than once, and certainly should have read it more than once. So what is one element of making it sure that you pass and do well? You've got to know that text. Anybody who goes into the exam and does not know that text, they're on a hiding to nothing. They're not going to get your 20, your 18 or 20. They may get a 10 to 13, and they may actually get a fails. Familiarity with some aspects of the text. Because really, it's not much different from 4 and 3, except the adjective some. And there's something you should maybe know about that. That's a real serious borderline between 4 and 3. One marker reading your essay might say, yeah, okay, I'll pass that one. I'll give that one 10 or whatever. And another one reading the same essay will say, no, that's a fail. I'll give that person a 9, but that's a fail. You're on a borderline there. You really are. You cannot be determined. You cannot be clear who is going to pass your essay or who is going to fail it if you're in that borderline. And if you haven't really read the text and you've only got some awareness of the writer's techniques, you are in that borderline. And by that meaning some awareness of the more obvious techniques, you have shown to the reader, to the examiner, that you know the techniques. Or, which is the case here, you actually don't know the techniques. You've got some awareness of metaphor and simile and whatever it is, and you just you may have even referred to them, but you've not shown the examiner that you have any idea what on earth these are about and why the writer used them and what he's achieving by using them. And that's all part of your analysis. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but it's quite clear there is a grading here. And if you want to go up to that grading 1, then you really need to be fully aware of the text. Thorough awareness of the writer's techniques. Not aware of the writer's techniques, thorough. That means you really know these techniques, how they are used, why they are used, what the writer is achieving through them. And so that needs to be in your essay. That's part of the analysis. Well, you talk about these, you show how they're used, you show why they're not. It is not the same as saying, here the writer has used a simile, and the simile is suggesting that. That is not thorough awareness. That might be some awareness. It might be even an awareness, but it is not under any chance thorough awareness. Thorough awareness is where you go into detail. Here's a quotation. Here's a device. Here is what the writer is trying to say. Here is how he's saying it. Here is the effect he's actually having by saying it. That is all part of thorough awareness. And it takes a while to get that into your essay. It's actually, if you're doing it properly in thorough awareness, you are talking of a paragraph in its own right, just to talk about these techniques. I mean, when I talk about the three areas, I call them really sections. They're not paragraphs, they're sections. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3. And each section can be a multi-paragraph section. And you got the same thing, really, with higher. Again, I'm not going to go through all of it, but I'll deal with some of it. Again, it's the same point. The text is all SQAE. You can find this on the exam board. You will find a watered-down version if you look at the marking instructions to it. And this is just about knowledge and understanding. And again, it's all about knowledge and understanding about the text. Adequate knowledge and understanding of the text, which is just succeeds. It does apply and suggest that you really don't know the text very well. And if you are really intending, if it's your intention when you are doing your exam, if your intention is, I want to get a top A mark, then adequate knowledge and understanding of the text will not get you there. And if you think it will, you're fooling yourself. You need thorough knowledge and understanding of the text, and that means, if in the case of a novel, you've read it more than once, possibly 3 times, you have made detailed notes, and you have actually you have actually gone over that. There's nothing in that text. You read that text line by line. I often use an audio file. I buy an audio file about the text I'm studying. I'm doing The Streetcar Named Desire at the moment. And I'm going through that line by line. I have a Word file. And as I go through it, I stop on the text, and I write down on my Word file the word that I'm talking about, or the area I'm talking about, where it is in the text. I put the page reference in. And I actually also put in the comment. Why is that important? Or why is that interesting? Or what does that refer to? Or as in the case, yeah, that's an interesting point. But if you go back to page, wherever that page was, he makes that point. And it's an interesting point that he's using exclamation marks here. Why? And therefore he's clearly suggesting that this, for the character, is extremely important. It takes me about 3-4 days to go through a text that way. But when I have done it, when I have got my notes together and got through it in that level of detail, there is nothing about the text that I do not know. That is what, in my mind, is meant by a thorough knowledge and understanding of the text. It is not sitting in a chair with the text beside me and reading it and falling asleep a bit and opening up and carrying on. Waking up, carrying on. Thorough knowledge is what it means. You have gone through that text line by line and you have made your notes, and my notes will be about 30, 40 pages when I finished it, which allows you, the second part, to when it comes to the question, you can select what elements of the text you feel will be best. Not the most obvious ones, what are the most ones that you think will actually get you a better mark, or will actually make a better comment. That perceptive selection of text or textual evidence can only come through a knowledge, a thorough knowledge and understanding of the text. Now, the rest of this higher guide is in the booklet, and I go through it line by line and column by column and explain what's needed and what you need to require in order to meet that criteria. So at the end of the booklet, I go on, I write a couple of pages about really what is it you need to do, summarizing really what it is you need to do to actually get a really good grade for a critical essay. So what are the basic things? Well, the first is you need to use a formal structure. In the booklet and elsewhere, I use SQAE, but it's not the only one by any stretch of the imagination, and all follow the same idea of the statement, the quote, the analysis, and the evaluation. I kind of emphasize that more than enough. I'm sorry, and particularly if it's a novel, and it'll be quite a long novel, you have no way out of this if you want to get that top mark by not having a thorough knowledge of the text. There's no way out of it. Cole's notes, or whatever these names of these notes are, they're not going to get you it. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that is the same as going through that text thoroughly. And if it's a novel, then you're going to go through it one or two times. If it's like me, I will actually probably only go through it once. But it'll take me days to go through it, and I will have a massive set of notes, detailed notes for every page of that text. And it's those notes that I will then use to actually think, along with my annotation of the text. I will actually highlight the text for each of these notes so that I've got that together. So they marry together, my notes and my annotation of the text itself, and marry them together, and I use them to it. But there's no way out of it. You want to get the top marks, you must have a thorough knowledge of the text. You really need a clear understanding of those marking criteria which are in the booklet. They are your guidelines. They tell you what actually the examiners are looking for in any area of the exam. And there's another helpful thing here is, if you think that, for example, your teacher is not giving you the mark that you feel you deserve, well, you could go up to the teacher and say, hang on a minute, why have you given me this sort of grade? I wouldn't actually advise it, but it's one way of doing it. The better way is taking the criteria with you, because the criteria defines why you should get this grade as opposed to that grade. Now, if you think you're deserving an A, then you're thinking that you've got the thorough knowledge of the text, you've done perceptive examples of your text, and so on and so forth down the line. And if you can say to your teacher, argue with your teacher, look, these points are in my essay, there's my perceptive analysis, there's this, there is that, then why am I not getting the 20? Then you've gone around. You're on a good position in which to argue your case. You may not win the case. The teacher may say, well, actually, I'm not sure that's perceptive, but then you're on the same level and you're talking about the same thing, and it's about the criteria. So they're actually quite useful. They're not just a guide to what you should do in the essay, they're also your backup. Application criteria, obviously. And that's how these things here, the knowledge, the perceptive selection of the text, and so on and so forth. Because that's only the first part. That's only for the text. And, of course, practice, practice, practice. You're not going to get your A essay on the very first go. And you're not going to be able to marry the criteria to your essay writing on one go. It's going to have to take time as you get used to what these criteria mean, what you think they mean. I put in the booklet what I think they mean, but what you think they mean, and how you can understand that and apply it to your writing. Because there is the difference. Understanding what the criteria mean and applying it to your critical essay writing are two different things, and it takes practice to be able to marry those two elements together. So if you feel that this is a booklet you might find of interest and might help you, then I'm happy for you to log onto the site and purchase it. It's not expensive. I think it's about £4. I think that one is, and I think it will give you some idea. I mean, it may not give you everything, but I think it will give you some idea of what to look for in improving your critical essay writing. Well, I hope this has been of use to you, and I thank you for listening.